Good afternoon. My name is Miss Damanka, and I am one of the career advising coaches for MoCo CAP, the Montgomery County Career Advising Program. I have here with me Miss Buitrago, who is a math teacher, and she's going to be telling us a little bit about her career and about her pathway. So thank you so much for joining us today.
For sure.
Okay, excellent. Can you start off? Can you tell me just a little bit about yourself and your professional background, please?
Yeah. I am 30 years old. I've been teaching for this will be my fourth year teaching seventh grade math. I was a math tutor for probably about 10 years before I started teaching. I have a degree in mathematics from St. Mary's College of Maryland. That's like kind of the overall lead up specifically towards math. But before I taught, along with tutoring, I also worked at a tea shop, a loose tea shop, and kind of educated people on that, which was really cool. As long, like obviously as well as selling, and I uh, did a whole bunch of other kind of random jobs through college. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. I'd definitely love to know, what do you think are some important qualities in order for you to be successful as a teacher or specifically as a math teacher?
Yeah. I think being able to, well, patience for sure, but being able to kind of ask solid questions to get to know how your students or other people learn and how they think um, is super important. Uh, a lot of teaching is not just knowing the content and
Mhm.
knowing how to communicate it in one way, but being able to figure out how it's being received. And I think that's a big piece that can get missed, is trying to figure out how your learner learns, not just how you communicate, and how to access that with them. Um, Communication, patience, organization, although I will be the first to admit I am not a type A teacher. I am kind of organized chaos. Um, I uh, but that said, there's systems in that. So being able to kind of look through content and be given what the county gives you, and then be able to take that and turn it into something that is your own that you can communicate is a really big deal. Um, yeah, my brain has forgotten the rest of your question. Apologies.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Those are really great traits, and especially traits that our students here in MCPS are learning their communication skills, being able to identify what their learning styles are, and active listening. So that's wonderful. So I'm curious, what do you think sets you apart from other math teachers or from other educators?
Um, so I'm super open that I'm neurodivergent with my kids. I think that's really important. I tend to work with a lot of my kids are special education students. About a third of my kids this past year are mainstream special education students, and so I think that in kind of a funny way, like the fact that I also have ADHD and some learning disabilities helps me to be able to identify with them and be able to identify struggles and come at things from different angles than
Mm,
other teachers do. I think I'm particularly good at um, kind of like I said with the question, figuring out how my kids learn
mm.
and how they receive and perceive information, and building on that. Um, I also think I'm a lot more patient uh, behaviorally with my kiddos compared to other teachers, and I think that it goes a long way relationally,
Mm,
which no kid cares what you have to say until they know that you care about what they have to say, and who they are.
Absolutely.
So that's a really big deal to me, is that my kids all feel heard in my room. Um, Even when, I might have to send somebody to another classroom for a few minutes to cool off, like, they know that that's not out of um, anger, and that's not, you know, it's not even a punishment. It's just a like, hey, go reset so that we can kind of get back on and all be on the same page again.
Mhm.
And you can have some space to kind of think through and um, respond rather than react.
I like that. I really like how you are using your lived experiences as someone who's neurodivergent to be able to support students who may have a variety of different access needs and helping them in order to be able to be successful. I think it's really great for us to be able to see that type of representation, to be able to see that even if you are neurodivergent, you can still be a teacher, you can still have, a very fulfilling career, and you can actually use the skills and the tools that you've learned in your journey to be able to support other students and to support other learners. So I think that that's really wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
For sure.
Okay, excellent. So as far as education and training for your position, can you tell me a little bit about the education and training that was necessary in order for you to be able to become a math teacher?
Yeah. So I teach down in Florida in Lee County. So I have what right now what's called a temporary certification, and I'm in the process of getting my professional certification, which I will hopefully have by the end of the school year. So basically, what that means is I'm coming in, or I came in as a teacher, as a career changer. I didn't study education; I just studied mathematics. Um, so I was able to get this temporary certification to teach secondary mathematics. With the understanding that I would either take 5 more education courses, college courses, or take an alternative certification program. So this past year, I wrapped up the alternative certification program through our county. So it takes the place of those 5 classes, and it's all about being able to navigate the standards, how to help English language learners, uh, students with exceptionalities, um, as well as the um, we call them FEEPs. I can't remember what it stands for, but basically, like, what are the core values that Florida has? Obviously, you're with MCPS, so there are going to be differences there. But I had to go through that program, as well as right before my first year, I did a 2 week like kind of crash course um, that just got me the basics. And then through my whole first year of teaching, I had a mentor program. So I had a veteran teacher kind of come alongside me and help me create my lesson plans, address any classroom management struggles that I was having, learn how to communicate with parents, all of that kind of stuff. Um, and now that I've completed this alternative certification program, I need to take 2 more exams to get my professional license.
That's really awesome. Best of luck in that. I know that you're going to do great.
Thank you.
Yes, so as we continue talking about your education and training, what is one significant lesson that you've learned throughout your career or that you've learned throughout your time as a math teacher?
Yeah. So I know I keep kind of coming back to the same thing, but relationships and uh, really getting to know every student and the way that they think and process information, and not just from an academic standpoint, but just as like a human standpoint, um, is one of the biggest things. And then the other piece is, as a teacher, there's a lot on your plate, and unfortunately, you're not always going to be able to get everything done. And so learning how to prioritize and um, kind of what, not necessarily can you drop, but what can get done good enough and what needs to be done with excellence, and being able to distinguish that and learn kind of the nuance there is super important.
Absolutely. So that actually kind of ties into the next question that I was going to ask. I know that you said that your organizational style is a little bit more of like organized chaos, but with all of the different demands of teaching and having to keep up with grades for so many students, what are some tools and resources that you use to keep yourself as organized as possible?
Yeah. I have a teacher planner that I actually I designed it myself on Canva, and I'm like super geeky proud about that. That I use. I made my own instead of using a pre-made one because I like to have I don't have my whole lesson in it, but I have like the topic and the unit. I want to have the appointments in there, and I want to have my task list and phone calls home all like kind of on the one page. Um, and be able to see that whole week at a time. And so that's one piece. I also, this past year, and I will be doing it for this upcoming year, but I'll just be editing the ones that I've made, is I designed my own guided notes sheets, which for me was really helpful because with ADHD, one of the hiccups I have often is I have a hard time perceiving time. And so if I'm trying to go through Google Slides, which is what the majority of my coworkers use to do lessons, I will spend 15 minutes on one question because I can't see where we are in the lesson. And I just, like, honest to goodness, just kind of forget about it. So having guided notes has been really helpful because I can see right on the sheet where we are and where we need to get to. So making my own, like, as maybe that doesn't sound like organization offhand, but it made a huge difference. And then uh, I also use Google Docs to kind of track all of my uh, just all of the paperwork that comes in because if I don't have it digitally, it's liable to get lost.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of success is really figuring out what individual tools work best for you in
Yeah.
order for you to be able to be the most successful. So I really like that you created your own planner and implemented the details that you needed that will help you to be able to stay on track. So a lot of times we feel like the resources that we have are not sufficient for us in order for us to do everything that we need. And so I really appreciate that you took the initiative to be able to create something that works well for
Yeah,
you.
it's super cool. It's definitely been a game changer this past year, being able to have that's the other piece to that, right? So like a lot of people like just digital. And I like digital because like I said, I lose track of papers. But if it's something that I need to be able to process, I need it written on paper. So to have a paper planner that I created is super, super helpful and really cool.
That's wonderful. Okay, perfect. So next we're going to talk a little bit about a day in the life of a professional. And I know that there's not necessarily like a typical day at school, and there's so many different moving pieces, but could you describe to us just kind of a high level overview of what does a typical day or even a typical week look like as a math teacher?
Yeah, like so from like wake up to bedtime or like at school.
Let's say at school, and
Cool.
then if there's anything that you're doing outside of school that is related as well.
Gotcha. Okay, so I this might be a little scattered because time is weird in my brain. I try to ahead of time print out the notes for the next day. Um, and so my kids have these guided notes sheets and they have a binder to keep them in. So by the end of the year, they basically build a textbook, which is pretty cool.
Nice.
Um, so the day before I get the notes printed out, hole punched, and prepped for them to be able to grab. And then I get to school and log in and sign in and all that jazz. Check email. I might have an IEP, well, probably not an IEP meeting in the morning, but I might have a parent teacher conference about 30 minutes before the kids arrive. That's probably once every 2 or 3 weeks. So that's not definitely not an everyday thing. Um, down here we have homeroom for 45 minutes before um, first period starts. our periods are a little different than I grew up in MCPS's system. So it was a little weird coming down here. So we have odd days and even days. And they have 6 classes every day. But as a math teacher, I see them every single day. So while they might change one day, like their electives rotate what they have, I see them at the same time every day. So that gets confusing on its own because they'll ask me, is daughter even? I have no idea because I see them every day. But they'll come in, we'll do like in class, we have a bell ringer for about 5 minutes. And then I this past year decided to go vocab heavy because I found that that seemed to be the bigger hiccup. I have a lot of English language learners, and as well as for my students with exceptionalities, they could do the math when they knew what the question was asking them to do, but they'd get stuck on the vocab. So this past year, and probably from now on, I'll be a little more vocab heavy than I've ever been in math. So we have our bell ringer, then we do vocab. And it's just like a fill in the blank. And then I'll do an example and then we'll kind of walk through together. I do a lot of choral responses in my classroom where the whole class will respond verbally. And then they'll have some independent practice or practice with their neighbor. I give them that option because some kids prefer one or the other. For a couple of minutes, then we'll come back together. I'll be circulating during that time to kind of get a temperature for how everybody's doing and where the common hiccups are, who's doing the same, because usually there's the confusion's in the same spot. And we'll come back together, address that, and then we'll do another example, and then they'll work again, and then we'll do an exit ticket at the end. And so that repeats we have 6 periods a day. So for 5 of those periods, that's what it looks like. And then I have lunch, have some more classes. This past year, I had my planning period at the end of the day. So planning period, I use for designing those guided notes sheets, contacting parents, writing referrals when someone's been kind of an exceptional knucklehead and I have to kind of refer them to admin, unfortunately. Restroom, snack, collaborating with coworkers. Sometimes we'll have data meetings where we kind of will grab the grade average for every period. So I'll meet with the rest of the 7th grade math team and we'll look at the tests that was most recent and kind of go through how each class scored differently overall and where we think why my first period did way better than my lunch period did and what went different in those classes and how can we take what went well in one and bring it into the other ones, as well as not just within my own class, but like I might have a coworker that was really successful on a test that my kids totally bombed. So trying to figure out what did they do different? What can I kind of take away from them? Collaboration is very important in teaching. There's a lot of teachers that have been teaching for a very long time and have a lot of wisdom to share. And not to say new teachers also have awesome ideas and having a fresh perspective, even just going into year 4, talking with first year teachers sometimes is really encouraging because they're not burnt out yet. And they're coming at it new. So something that I'm just used to and I do it the same way every time because I've been doing it that way for 4 years. And then somebody comes in and is like, like that could be easier if you did this way. Like that's super helpful. Of that. Then at the end of the day, we have duty stations during dismissal. So I this past year kind of hit the jackpot on my duty station because I was in our 2nd building in the lobby, making sure that kids didn't hide in the bathroom. So I got to just sit in the AC and hang out for 45 minutes at the end of the day instead of being in the sun or in the cafe, which the cafe is rough, spoiled milk and bleach. So we're happy that we have the lobby. And then I head home. I should say also I was a club sponsor this past year. So one day a week I had a club in my classroom called the Fiber Arts Club where I had anywhere from 6 to, I think our biggest day was 16 students that would come after school and
Oh, wow.
learn how to crochet or make pom-poms. That was the most popular thing. Some kids made friendship bracelets. A couple tried to learn how to embroider, but mostly just kind of hanging out and having a safe space to just kind of be themselves and hang with friends. And um, so that was really cool too. So that was once a week. And then I'd head home. There's definitely a lot of mental prep that goes into teaching outside when you're not at school. Like right now it's summer and I before this was kind of going through my content, seeing what I needed to edit for next year. I'll be doing that for a few weeks, even though right now it's not contract time, but uh it makes the year go smoother. So there's a lot of outside stuff that happens, but it's not usually consistent, like in a routine.
Makes sense. All right. Thank you so much for giving us an overview of what your day looks like. I know that a lot of people, when they think about teachers, they're often thinking about people who have to grade papers late at night and on the weekends and things like that. And so sometimes people are deterred from being a teacher because they worry that there's not a sufficient work-life balance. So being 4 years in, would you say that you've been able to find a work-life balance? And if so, what helps you to be able to keep that balance?
Um, that's a tricky question to answer. I think it's yes and no.
Okay.
It comes in waves. For the most part, I'd say yes. However, teaching takes a lot of energy and a lot of mental energy. So even though I think that I've kind of gotten to a point where I've been able to figure out on a physical level the work-life balance, like
Mm.
I'm I on weekdays only work my contract hours and my club days. Um, I don't usually bring grading home, and I have one day on the weekends that I let myself grade and get caught up on stuff. So on like a physical front, like I'm not up late grading usually. I don't bring homework home. I don't bring papers home, or tests home to grade a ton. However, uh, during the school year, it takes, like I said, it takes a lot of energy, and I think that being intentional about doing some mental check-ins is really important. And kind of, I think I said this earlier, of like figuring out what needs to be done with excellence and what can get done halfway is really, really important. This past year, I opted to do daily homework, which for our school is unusual. Um, Only reading and math are allowed to give homework at our school, which again, I should give a little bit of context to that of I have we're a Title I school, and a large portion of my kids, uh, their parents are working at least two jobs to make ends meet. So when they go home, their job is taking care of their younger siblings. Like they don't have, um, they have to grow up fast in a lot of ways. So our school is very intentional about trying to preserve their time outside of school. But math you learn by practicing, and there has been copious amounts of research. It's one of the few subjects where taking time a few hours later to spend 10 or 15 minutes on new content drills it into your brain way better. It helps those neurological pathways. So anyway, I chose to do daily homework this year, and so that meant a lot more grading. But I figured out how to use a spreadsheet to grade for me. So trying to find like whatever shortcut can be there. I know a lot of teachers that use Google Forms to do tests. That way, again, it's just auto graded. So all they have to do on that front is input. I'm a little bit old school. All my tests are on paper, because I care a whole lot more about thinking than if you got the answer right or not. I mean, I want you to get it right. That's important too, but I would like to see what you did, because if you just did a typo and that's why you got an answer wrong, I would like to be able to give you the majority of the credit. So it's a lot of give and take, because that did mean tests had to come home with me some weekends. But again, I reserved a specific day for that, and kind of put a limit on that, and answer keys are very helpful. I will say too, though, with teaching, it's nice being able to have breaks and have summers off. Now, I say that a little bit cautiously, because when we say summers off, your contract time is for 10 months of the year. So I am not technically employed by my county right now. I have been intentional when I signed my contract to also opt into having them take some of my payout for each paycheck. So I still get paychecks in the summer, but I'm not contracted in. I also will say my first year teaching, I said abundantly, I thought that breaks during the school year were for the students to have a break, and they are not. They're so that the teachers can recharge, and they don't, because by the time that you reach November and December, you are exhausted. And it's an exhaustion that is different um than any other kind of tired. So they're there for a reason. I I think that it's important that anybody that goes into teaching has a passion for teaching. I don't think it's a career that you can go into to make a paycheck. You have to know that you are going to be making sacrifices during the school year to your time, and your energy is the biggest thing. But I will say again, like, it's not the only thing I do. Like, I have a social life. I do stuff during the week. I do stuff on the weekends. Like, it's not like that's my whole life during the school year. But my life is built around teaching during the school year. So,
For sure.
it's super worth it. But it's a different type of work-life balance than I think other careers have, except maybe nursing. Nursing has a pretty intense go at it too, anyway.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that. As we're wrapping up, we would just love to know, and this is just a little bit of a silly question. If you could switch roles with somebody in a completely different profession for a day, what kind of job would you want to do?
For a day.
Assuming that you had all the skills and knowledge to be able to do the
Yeah.
job successfully.
Oh my gosh, I really like that question. I feel like there's going to be a wrong answer. Just not that there is a wrong answer, but like, I like the question so much, I feel like there's going to be a wrong answer. Man, I loved my tea shop job. That was a ton of fun. I also feel like maybe being a zookeeper might be really
Ooh,
fun.
that would be
Um,
cool.
yeah, I'm not sure. But I will be thinking about that for a long time. I like that question a lot.
That's great. So lastly, I just wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to interview with me and to share a little bit about your experience. The last thing that I wanted to touch on briefly were your RIASEC themes, because I know that we've been talking about RIASEC and
Yeah.
just talking about how all of the different themes can relate to your career.
Yeah.
So I know that when you had taken the assessment, your top themes were investigative, artistic, and social. And so for the investigative theme, that shows up a lot in math and science, being able to solve problems and being able to identify why things are the way that they are, doing proofs using logic and reasoning. So we can definitely see that. And
Yeah.
for social as well, a lot of our teachers and a lot of our educators fall into the social category because they're people who love to help people, who love to encourage and lead people and lead the next generation. But
Yeah.
I'm curious in regards to the artistic theme, how does your love for art and your passion for art tie into your role as a teacher?
Yeah. I think that, well, my club, obviously with Fiber Arts Club that has arts involved. Um, I I think a big piece of being able to make math receivable is being able to display it well, um,
Okay.
and kind of create sometimes a literal picture of what's happening, and sometimes like just in the word picture or the gesturing, all of that stuff, and being able to express not just with words about a concept, but um, visually, whether that's again like a drawing on the board or something else. I think that's really important. I do think that it's also plays a role. I like to, when I can, bring projects into my room. So one of my favorite projects that we do is for our circles unit. Um, I do a bubble art project with my kids where
Ooh.
it's a bubble solution with food dye in it, and they blow bubbles for about 5 minutes onto a piece of watercolor paper. Then they have to trace as many circles as they can find, and uh, then they pick five of them to find the area, and the circumference and the diameter and radius and all of that of the circle. So uh, it lets them, it gives me the opportunity to come up with ways for them to interact with the material in a different way. Um,
That's really cool.
yeah.
All right, well, that's awesome. Well, that is all I have for you today. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you for taking the time to meet with us and to talk to our
Yeah.
MCPS students about your career as a teacher.